Welcome to the Women Leadership Nation Breaking Barriers podcast. Our guest today is a dynamic woman whose energy and lust for life radiates off her. She is a passionate, real, down-to-earth thought leader who developed the concept of expansive living, which is the integration and amalgamation of all your passions and skills to live a happy and successful life. Abigail is the head of strategic planning at Google, where she leads Google's creative think tank for agencies and brands, where she helps advertisers and marketers make sense of human beings' deep emotional relationship to the digital space. She shines in a unique humanistic lens on the culture, business, beauty, and technology industries. I guarantee you, by listening to our interview, you're going to learn so much about how it's possible to really take what you're passionate about in life and really integrate that into what you're doing and actually have a competitive advantage because of doing so. If you enjoyed today's show, please don't forget to subscribe and share our podcast with other women that are navigating their careers. Thanks so much for being on our podcast today.
My pleasure.
So a question that we ask every guest is, and I'd love to ask you, is
Sure.
When you were younger, what did you want to be?
You know, it's funny because I remember wanting to be a fashion designer, but I really love fashion and I liked arts and crafts and everything like that. I liked drawing and I liked the artistic side of it, but I realized I was a sucky drawer. So, after I kind of reached my teenage years, I said, this is not going to be it. So I don't remember having after that an exact role, but I had a feeling I wanted. I had a situation I wanted. And I remember what I wanted was a role where I could be with lots of different people, interesting people from around the world, and it would be colorful and full of senses, and where I could meet and just feel like a lot of energy. And if I could dress nicely too, that would be fun.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a perk, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible, like how you tap into that energy, and that some of that intuition you probably followed throughout your career as well, right?
I did. When I got to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. And I was fortunate enough to go to a university where it wasn't pre-professional. So you didn't have to map it out. But after about a year or so, you had to pick a major.
Right.
And it was like the spirits or something just guided me, because interestingly, I took a course that I wasn't supposed to take. I thought I was going to take this major course about China, that everybody wanted to get into that course, and I didn't get in. So I took the next best thing, which was this course about Iran and the revolution in Iran. And I was like, you know what? I got to make lemonade out of lemons, right? I loved it. And I realized from there, it was my freshman year, I realized I need to study this thing called anthropology.
Wow.
And it wasn't like I had known what that was before going to college. It's not like someone says, okay, I'm going to become an anthropologist when I grow up. It's not really like a typical, it's not like a fashion designer or an accountant, So I just launched into this and I absolutely loved it. And I remember I was also super lucky because my parents are academics. So they just were like, study what you want. I mean, almost to the point where, like, if I didn't get a PhD, I wasn't really, getting a degree. Like they can't really imagine.
The bar is very high.
Yeah. Well, also just like academics were big.
Right.
So they were super supportive. But I remember people, like their buddies, would say things to me like, what are you going to do with that? What's anthropology? Or I remember when I was looking at jobs and they'd be like, what? Did you, I don't know, dig for bones or something? So I didn't let that dissuade me. And I just, really leaned in, loved it, found ways to make it my own and really leverage what I found really interesting and connect that to anthropology. And then throughout my life, I have leveraged my anthropology background. no matter what career. And I've been in a few different careers. So, yeah, I just, I trusted my gut that this was right for me. And I've often advised people, follow the love, because not only will you put your all into it, but you're inevitably going to be doing it better than anything else because you love it, right? And I know that sounds kind of
Yeah.
hackneyed, and
No,
you've
but
heard
it's
that, but
true.
it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to have that energy and that passion, or you're never going to be successful in your career. Really, you need to love
Absolutely.
it. And what's really interesting is I had so I did some research on you, of course, and when I looked at your degree, I also immediately, and being very honest, was thinking, wow, like how did you get from anthropology to then I heard you explain economic anthropology, and
Yes.
then it clicked for me in a way that I had never thought of it before. And
Right.
it's so fundamental in terms of your perspective on things, which is
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like if the thread, I mean, listen, there were some deviations in the mix, and then
right.
those deviations turned out to be mistakes. So they were deviations. But, if you really kind of peeled back the different stages of my life to its essence,
Right.
right, they do all kind of connect in some weird funny way. So if anthropology was the study of why people do what we do, like why we wear what we wear, or drink what we drink, or vote the way we vote in November,
Right.
then you move to advertising, and I was what was called a brand strategist, and I dug into people's behavior. I'm really just understanding why people buy what they buy, and
Yeah.
the motivations, and then what that means for communication strategy. And then I moved to Google, and now my team spend, but I spent when I first got there a lot of time just digging into why people have the relationship they have with their computers or their phones or
Right.
certain videos they watch. And even now, my one of my teams digs into human behavior to really understand what's motivating them, so that we can help our clients develop messaging that is really impactful. So there's all of this analysis of why throughout.
No, I love it, and I think that's why I think you're so interesting in terms of when people are looking at career journeys. Your journey is so interesting. It also makes a lot of sense, and I can make the connection as to, you presented and you have on your website the concept of expansive living. And
Yeah.
this is very interesting. And in your article, you said you talk about expansive living as an approach to living a meaningful life and successful and happy life. And you describe this approach as really being able to encounter and include the contradictions in
Yes.
aspects of your life. So maybe you can talk to
Yes.
us a little bit more about that, because it
Sure.
made a lot more sense to me, your history, as to how you are so naturally able to do this.
Yeah. Well, what I described was really my career trajectory. But what I didn't describe were all the things I do on the side. And the reason, and I probably shouldn't even articulate it as such on the side, because they're all very meaningful for me. And somehow by claiming that they're on the side, it
Yeah.
means they're somehow not important, but they're extremely important. One of the other things I talk about is my beauty blog, and how that's an extension of trying to understand the why behind human behavior. In this case, it's around our beauty rituals, and why we still are fascinated or interested or hate or demonize certain things around beauty. But just to go back to your main question or main point, I believe, and maybe this is more because of my inclination about myself, but
Yeah.
I believe, we all have passions, interests, hobbies, sides of ourselves,
Right.
that we may or may not always express in our day jobs. Um, and we may, if we're lucky, be able to pursue them on the side, on the weekends, um, or we may even think like, I don't think I'm going to go there. That doesn't fit my brand image. And my whole story in life was that I wanted all these different things,
Mm-hmm.
and I was going to pursue them. I didn't necessarily have a strategy until later. And then I started realizing what I do instinctively. So I realized I wanted to get married and have children. I wanted to be a relatively observant Jew. I wanted to be very feminine and embrace my femininity, uh, even in the workplace. And that was just going to be who I was. I wanted to pursue this weird space around beauty and culture. And I wanted to, investigate fashion. I wanted to write about my thoughts. So I had all these things that I wanted to do. I wasn't going to stop myself. And then what I noticed was that actually these different sides don't have to be compartmentalized.
Mhm.
They should be pursued and they should be blended to offer up new ideas and new solutions. So, for example, I mean, this in some cases it started out as like a coping mechanism, really.
Mhm.
So when I remember when I was much younger, I was the third child, and my siblings are wicked smart. And I felt like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to compete. But I do have these other sides of myself that I could leverage. I liked to act. I was ham in front of the camera. I liked fashion and style. And so I'm just going to pursue that in addition to my other sides. And so I remember in sixth grade, I had to write a history paper. It was about the Wild West. And everybody else was doing the responsible thing, and they were writing about, a war or an edict or I don't know, some president. And I said, well, I want to write about the fashion of the times. And I'm going to analyze why people wore what they wore. Because, hey, I knew that if I'm going to choose something I'm passionate about, I'm going to put my all into it. And it was something that I had a sense for. So luckily enough, my teacher said, sure. And then didn't think I was going to get an A because, look, this was my passion project. And that was I was willing to take the hit because it wasn't about a president or it wasn't about, the founding of a new state. But I did get an A.
Wow.
Because I was very passionate and I put my all into it. And I did something that nobody else would have ever chosen.
Yeah.
Right?
You really differentiated yourself, and then you probably put the
Exactly.
connections that people wouldn't have even thought of.
Exactly. So then fast forward to college, and I um, I was able to again. I had to cope because I didn't think that I was going to be able to succeed in college because what was I gonna? I thought I was a little bit of a charlatan. Like, how am I going to make it here? Um, but I did have something in my arsenal of goodies, which is I had studied in Jewish day school my whole life. I had yeshiva education. I had studied Talmud. I had studied Bible. I had studied Jewish history. So whenever I could, I would kind of dive into my bag of goodies and
Yeah.
leverage it all the way into my thesis for my anthropology degree. I knew Israel, I knew Hebrew, and I had a boyfriend there, so let's go. So I didn't realize until later in my life that I had this way of coping, which was actually my superpower, right? Because I was able to find these sides of myself and combine them to give me that extra edge, to give me a new concept, a new idea. So fast forward into my career, and I had to write a blog. I was told you need to write a blog. You need to get yourself out there. And I was like, what am I going to write a blog? I mean, about advertising. This is when I was in my advertising, about mommies and business. Like, how many times have you seen that, right? But I had done this year-long analysis of beauty in our culture because I had a beauty client, and it went nowhere. Went nowhere. And then I said, aha, that's what my blog is going to be about. And so I've always been able to take things. And the final story to just bring it to life, even more so, was when I went to Google. Again, I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know a lot about tech. They're going to find me out. I'm going to be dead within a month. Okay. But then I noticed something that, well, I may not know a lot about technology. I knew a ton about anthropology. And as I said, anthropology is really understanding why people do what we do. And of course, I honed that skill when I was in advertising. And so when I was in tech, I had seen that there was a lot of great research around what people were doing with technology. So, how many times they were on their smartphone during a day, or how many apps they bought, or which videos they watched on YouTube. And all that information is super important. But nobody was investigating why. Nobody was investigating why people were doing what they were doing. And so we literally launched anthropology studies. They had never been done in the industry, let alone Google, right? Like never been done.
Wow.
To really uncover what is the meaning behind our deep emotional relationship to all these devices and platforms. And when we uncovered that, we had a whole series of studies called Humanizing Digital, which helped our clients really understand how to leverage these devices, these platforms, these digital places and spaces to connect that much more strongly. So, and that was career changing. That was game changing. So again, I used my skill set, and I almost felt like I was in a deficit. I was at a deficit, but instead the seeming differences or deficits, whatever that I had, actually became my superpower again.
I love it. I think that there's so many incredible examples as well of women getting into, or men getting into positions where they feel like, maybe that they didn't study a certain thing, but they
Right.
actually come to the table with new ideas. I know, a long time ago when I worked in government, and I hired, I was in economic development, and I hired a woman that had, her career was actually in media and television, no economic development experience at all.
Wow.
But she was incredible because she knew how to engage, she knew how to talk to the businesses, she knew how to pull. So there's certain skills and things that you can learn, but you actually bring from, based on what you've learned. And
Absolutely. If you have mentality, right? Like I think a lot of it is just trust in yourself. And that's
yeah,
not easy. I mean, believe me, like I woke up this morning and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a tricky, not this, but there were other
yes,
things I had to do. I was like, this is going to be a
yeah,
tricky day. And I have to remind myself, trust in yourself that it's going
yeah,
to be good. It's going to be fine. So some of these tricks that we take, that we leverage to be successful, be productive, and be happy. Some of it are just simple, basic human um, reminders or approaches to life that you need to, that are critical, that are important. Another key I often use to encourage people to embrace their expansiveness is to just say yes.
hmm,
Like, now, how simple is that, right?
right,
But we say no to so many things. So, for example, um, I'm on the speaking circuit now. How did I get that gig? Because I just said yes. What happened was I was invited to speak on a panel. And, I have the luxury of getting invited because of Google helps, but I've spoken before and, in my advertising days, but, speaking on another panel, and it was a schlep. I had to get it was a pain in the butt, and I didn't really want to do it. And, but I just said yes.
yeah,
And in the audience was the person that was going to connect me to this whole world, you know. Or another example was I was asked to speak at another conference, and it was a fashion conference. Oh, goody, right? That would be just my thing. And I figured they were going to, they wanted someone with data and tech, in their background. I assumed, oh, they're going to want me to talk about like data meets fashion, or my opinion on fashion and artificial intelligence, stuff I've spoken about before. No, they wanted me to speak about China. And I
yeah.
said,
That's
I,
amazing.
I'm sorry, but like I never got to take that class in college, right? That I
Yeah,
told you I was cut out of. Um, and it's not my market. I've never even been there. I don't speak Mandarin, though I wish I did. So I said, I don't think this is right, buddy. And he said, the conference host said, well, are you familiar with WeChat? And I said, well, of course I'm familiar with WeChat because of all the anthropology studies I've done. I know about WeChat. It's the largest social media network in China. He said, you know what? Between that and your anthropology background, it'll be fine. I thought, I don't know. I was a little trepidatious, but I trusted in myself. I
Right.
trusted in the conference and what they were trying to do. And I just said yes. And then in the audience were my future partners in a fashion and lifestyle publication that it markets to China. So, you have to just
Yeah.
say it and trust yourself. Trust yourself that you can take the time out of your day. Trust yourself that you can wing it when you need to.
Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
I mean, always like leverage what you know and what you can
Right.
do, not just BS, but you can find a way to connect your passion and your interest and your skills to whatever is the request at hand.
I love too the fact that you're giving yourself permission as well to follow your passion and follow some of the things that really drive you. And a lot of times especially when you're busy with family, with your career and everything else, there's
Right.
certain joys that you have and passion projects that you might want to work on. By giving yourself permission to do that, you're actually you're expanding so that you're able to come up with new and
Exactly.
innovative ideas.
Exactly. Exactly. Because if you don't say yes, you're not going to give yourself the opportunity to unleash, hone, express, these sides of ourselves, while they may be natural to us, and to use your word intuitive, they still could use some shaping. They still could use some polishing. So unless you put yourself out there, unless you just say yes and expose yourself to people who can reflect on your sides or give you more opportunities to connect your sides to other sides or their sides, you won't be able to really harness what's so amazing. So I totally agree with you.
And do you believe so? I've been thinking a lot more about it too. And what advice do you have to women that are trying to do this? Would you agree that one of the first things would be increasing self-awareness? And what else do you think?
Absolutely. It's increasing self-awareness, asking yourself, like literally taking a journal and writing down, what do you really enjoy doing? And it could be as seemingly unrelated as playing the piano, unrelated to your career or unrelated to the world you want to pursue. It could be playing the piano. It could be, I enjoy shopping. I enjoy cooking. I personally enjoy reading like really dark mystery novels. And
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out what I can do with that, but
With
I
the
know I
connection.
can at some point. Yeah, exactly. Um, Maybe I really enjoy people and socializing. So take these different sides of yourself, like really kind of recognize them, and then ask yourself, can I pursue them further? Can I hone them further? Can I polish them further? No question you can. No question you can. And then once you do that, once you start kind of really exploring and thinking about them a little bit more, try to find a connection. Your brain will find a connection. I want to give you an example I use in some of my speeches. Um, the New York Police Department must take a course. It's mandatory. It's called the Art of Perception. And it really helps hone their perception abilities and really challenge their internal biases when looking at crime scenes. Because if
Hmm.
you think about it, a crime scene is like a painting.
Yeah.
Now you're nodding because it's like, oh,
Yeah. It's
yeah, I can see the connect. But like, if you first said, "Hey, I'm an artist and I want to connect that to my detective work," you'd probably be like, "Okay, then the only thing you can do is pursue art, art thieves." I mean,
yeah.
like, what would you? Right. So
That's
my
true.
point is,
That's true. And it
your
opens up your
brain can find the
perception into how
connection.
you see things differently.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's great.
So, and by the way, like the other thing I talk about a lot too is that at the heart of creativity is really making connections. That's really what all innovations and creations are born from. It's not because you're like some super duper talented person and
Hmm.
only you can be creative and your mind works in some special way and a light bulb goes off, or it's not because you've been trained a certain way, right? Everybody's creative, and really, at the heart of creativity is making connections among different worlds, making connections among different stimuli. And that's really what our brains do. Like, that's synapses, it's connecting the
Yeah.
neurons, right? And so, if you believe in that, if you understand, not in that, like it's true, I'm saying if you believe in yourself and you can do that,
Yeah.
then you then you open yourself up to starting to say, okay, what could these weird different worlds possibly have in common? What could anthropology and technology possibly have in common? What could anthropology and beauty possibly have in common? What could my Jewish background and the English paper I have to write possibly have in, like, if you start kind of saying to yourself, you will find that commonality.
Like
Just
even
think
just
about it.
asking the question is like,
Yes.
that's really important,
And
right?
bring other people into this process, because you will undoubtedly find people who come from different perspectives, have different hobbies themselves, and you will find the connections together.
So, what's really cool is that I think that this can help you in your career as well to
Right.
differentiate yourself, to really break out and have those opposing thoughts and bring them together and come up with new ideas. Do you believe that this is also a concept that companies and organizations themselves could be applying?
Absolutely. So one of the things I do when I build teams is I look for people with obviously the desired, the desired skill set in order to do the role, but then other sides of them. I want to see in their CV and their LinkedIn profile, I want to see that they're doing other things, because then I know they can bring that to the team. And then I often ask the team members themselves if they've embraced their expansiveness, which I hope they have. Now teamwork it. Now try to combine the different sides together to see what happens. So I have an example of this. In one of the teams that I run, it's called Creative Effectiveness. And basically what the analysts do is they analyze how successful the ads are. Are people watching them? Are they clicking on them? Are people buying from them? But then there's this one member of the team who I brought in purposefully because he also happens to be a YouTube creator on the side. His name is Sean.
Right.
And so he has brought his ability to develop videos, edit videos, produce videos, so that he can help bring our analyses to life via the video, right? There's another member of that team who is a data rock star, Mo, but he also happens to be a creative writer on the side. So imagine what happens when you combine Sean's talents with Mo's talents, right?
Yeah, that's
So
really cool.
it's about really creating a team that is multifaceted and that is expansive. And the great news is that when your teams go to innovate, they will develop ideas that only they could have generated, because no other team is going to have that spread, that array of different talents and skills that when brought together, you'll make connections that nobody else will.
Yeah,
So,
really cool.
it really can benefit organizations as well as individuals.
And I would say, part of the challenge, maybe when people are getting used to doing this, is making those connections. But I think would you agree that in a team environment, it will naturally come out because people will be more naturally, they might have the experience of film and television.
Right,
They might say,
right.
okay, have you looked at it this perspective? So
Well, that's the critical role of the culture and the leader, right, of the organization. Because if back to the point I was making before, some of the most fundamental human um, emotions are necessary in order to fully fulfill this, right? You need a sense of trust. You need a sense of psychological safety. You need a belief in yourself, confidence, right? So if you don't have those aren't going to happen. Because you're going to feel so nervous about expressing yourself, or you're going to feel so unconfident that what these different sides that you have actually have any value. So it's super important that the culture, the corporate culture, and particularly the team leader encourages, cultivates the sense of expansiveness. Otherwise, the individuals won't, I don't think, do it. I mean, look at
yeah.
how many organizations we're aware of where people bring a portion of themselves to the office or virtual office, right? It's a shame.
Yeah, that's true. I think that they need to have the sense that if they come up with an idea that probably in their head they're thinking this might be crazy, and
Right?
it's probably really good if they think that. But if they
Exactly.
have that in supportive environment where they feel like they
Right.
could be nurtured, absolutely.
Right.
I assume that Google is so well known for that, in terms of, some of that I've read that, the organization helps and encourages individual Googlers to actually spend time on passion projects. Do you think that's one strategy of helping to bring that forward?
Absolutely, because the belief there is you have something to give that others don't. Pursue it, leverage it, take advantage of it. And I think that, without that sense of psychological safety that you can do that, people wouldn't. Now, I'm not saying everyone leverages it. Not everyone takes advantage of it, but the fact that you can. Like I remember people would say, "What's the difference between your advertising experience and Google?" And I was like, "You have a year," and I can explain to you. But I think the biggest difference, and this was so much more felt beginning, was that I felt like in my past careers, if I had an idea, I had to kill myself to try to sell it in. And once I sold it in, if I was lucky enough to sell it in, the response would be, "This is great, but we don't have the money to support it."
Right.
I came to Google and it was like, "We don't really know what you're talking about, but we know you're smart. We brought you in here for a reason. So here's some money, go try it." It's just a different, money or no money. The point is that, I still had to beg for money too, but there's an ingoing assumption that you probably have something to offer. So let's play. Go for it. We'll take a risk on you.
So what would you say to individuals that maybe don't have that supportive network but still want to explore?
So I would say to people, because obviously I experienced that before, this round of my career, find other outlets to pursue it, right? So I was a thought leader before I really had the runway to do that. And I pursued it on my own, right? I would write on my own. I started my own blog. I, was invited to do speeches that were not necessarily offered to me through my job. I would just kind of, found them. The other thing I do is I just say yes to a lot of meetings with people that are not necessarily from my company, or, and by the way, it took me a while to realize the importance of that. I would say I was not a great networker for the first 15 years of my career, partly because I didn't grow up in a culture where that was wasn't taught that was important. My parents didn't really do it. I was a young mother of 3 and was, focused on that. And also I didn't think it was like a real job. I didn't think it was like real to network. That was more like if you're a schmoozer and I'm head to the ground and I'm a strategist and then I woke up one day and said, "Oh shit, I better start networking." And that opened up. And I don't mean networking necessarily in the very highly strategic way. I mean, like just going out and meeting people and being open to meeting people. And all of a sudden that opened up opportunities for me to have certain kinds of partnerships, jump into interesting endeavors. I mean, like I said, the Chinese publication that I'm associated with, this public speaking that I do, I'm maybe even working on a show. Like all these things, because I have friends or interesting people in my life that I met along the way that struck up these interesting endeavors.
And you're open to it. So I think that's a big thing.
Yeah.
I've always found too, like the interactions and meeting people from different countries, that opens your mind up too to doing things differently and trying to see, and
Absolutely.
also, just getting people in the room. I always love also, this is just naturally as well, where I want to have people in the room that you typically wouldn't put in the room.
Yes. Yes.
And it's almost awkward sometimes.
No question.
Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, collaboration is a huge tenet of where my culture, my corporate culture, but also of the creative process. And in fact, sometimes you should bring people you may not even like into that process. And you probably don't like them because they have differing views, or you probably don't like them because they think about things differently. That's exactly why you should have them in the room. Yeah. It may not be as pleasant as everyone agreeing with you, and it may not be as pleasant as having your buddy there, but it's important. You need that the disparity, or not disparity, the diversity rather, of opinions. Again, like I said before, you're going to make connections on disconnected stimuli. Same as is true with the opinions. So you want people with very different experiences to shed light on your thinking.
And so I want to go back to, something that you said in terms of living a meaningful life and successful life. So we focused a lot on, like, obviously, if you do this, you are going to grow your career, you're going to be more successful. But in terms of having a purposeful, happier life, how does living an expansive life help you to do that?
I think in a number of ways. Obviously, everybody's source of happiness is different. But if you do care about your career, then it's always great to feel like you're progressing and you're succeeding. That makes you happy. But I also think, and probably more important than that, is you're gonna have things that you love to do, and you probably love to do them because you're a curious person, or because you have certain talents, because you just find them fun and interesting. How much more happy would you be if you can pursue them, right? And if you can find that other people get benefit from them. I love my anthropology background. I love studying that. I love performing. I was an actress in high school. But what I really love more than anything is not only that I can pursue all that, but then I can gift insights to other people who can take something and do something with it. So how great is that, right? Yeah. I'm tapping all my different passions. I'm able to explore them, my career benefits from them. So therefore, I feel like I'm fulfilling my obligations as an employee and as a team leader. And of course, I can feed my kids as a result. Yeah. But it can also benefit humankind through my own passions. So to me, I think that's what makes us all happy in the end.
That's amazing. And, you keep the way that you're talking about it too. I really feel like just even being aware that you can make these connections, that you can do this, that your mind subconsciously is going to be making those connections for you. It's going to be helping you along.
Yes.
And you just have to, like you said, say yes and be open to. So where do you get the courage then? And what do you suggest to people to maybe baby steps and then really taking it on?
Well, I love that word courage, because that's so true. As I said before, you have to have a sense of trust and belief, right? Two things. One is, I think you have to have this belief that things will work out. That's hard. There's no, study, there's no data to really tell you it's going to work out. You have to kind of believe in that. And that mentality will already put you in the right direction. And then I think second, you can start in little ways, right? So as I said, you can start on the side. If you really love cooking and you really love culture, okay, well, there's a natural fit there, right? So I'm going to maybe contribute to a blog about my cultural understanding of, or my newfound understanding of different cultures through food. See what happens, see how people respond. I mean, the great thing about social media is that people are responsive, and for the most part, in a positive way, right? So there's small steps you can take, or you can go and say, invite your girlfriend or boyfriend or cousin or sister, to a cocktail and say, look, I'm really interested in this thing and this thing and this thing. Help me figure out if I can make a connection. How hard is that? Worst thing that happens is you have some fun and you go back and you just had an enjoyable, social distance drink. But the best thing that can happen is it sparks ideas. And then you take those ideas further. And then you start going a little bit further out of your comfort zone, or farther out of your comfort zone, or out of your inner circle, and test the waters there. Maybe you get invited to do a panel and see how people respond. So little by little, you get responses to this. And sometimes you're going to fail too. Like I was the first iteration of this speech, I presented in a forum and in a way that just was not appropriate. Like it was
Right.
just, it,
And you're
you know,
testing the waters, right? You're
I
just
was testing the waters, yeah. And luckily I was working with my speaking manager and she was cool with it. Like, let's learn from it. Let's not give up, right? So as long as you also give yourself a little bit of leeway to, trip. I'm not
right.
saying fall, just trip a little bit and kind of learn from the trip. Um, so nothing has to be done overnight. And this is great, this conversation and these questions, because I'll probably adapt them in my speech now. Because I do think that probably some people are still afraid to take that first step. And, there probably are kind of interim stages you can take, but definitely there are little by little, or just,
Yeah.
go on and write to me on LinkedIn or, on Instagram and just, give me a thought and I can respond to it. There are so many people who want to be helpful.
Yeah. And
And if you solicit it, they will.
so I have a question for you. So, there's a lot of talk about authenticity, and
Yeah.
certainly, I feel like there's a components of that too, because you're being yourself. You're really trying to identify your whole self. What
Yeah.
role does authenticity play in this approach?
Um, Authenticity is one of those words that used to get thrown at us, even in my advertising days. It's kind of like
Yeah,
cool, like be cool.
it's
That
like
was like
innovation
the
now.
80s were cool. Then like, 80s and 90s were cool. And then like the 2000s were authentic. And you're like, what does that really mean? What does that mean? And the only thing I can say is I don't disagree with the concept of it. Like, I think we should all be true to ourselves. I just think people don't know necessarily how to do that, or
Yeah,
how do I say it comes with certain kind of, I think, baggage, like, oh, so you've got to be like really like, um ridiculous or something.
yeah,
You can't be polished in any way. Well, sure, you can be polished, right? I mean, clearly I'm not so polished with this necklace today. um, but like, but I wouldn't recommend that on anybody. Like, next time I'm not wearing the necklace. So I think, if being polished means I can be that much more of um, a better speaker and better
yeah,
communicator, then I'm gonna be. I just think it's just about really trusting in ourselves as much as we can and recognizing that we have something to give and we have something to learn too, and
yeah,
not to be worried about that, right? Not to be worried that we have nothing to offer, and not to be worried that even if we do offer something and it isn't perfect, that you can't evolve and grow from that it's okay. So I just think I would say the best way I would encourage someone to be authentic is to trust in yourself and, recognize you're really amazing. I mean, every individual, and this is where my spiritual side comes in, so I'm
hmm,
pulling from all my different sides, right?
right,
Like every human being, I don't, it depends on, you don't have to necessarily believe in a deity, but like every human being has a bit of God or,
yeah,
light in them.
right.
So you do too. And that light needs to be experienced and should be experienced by others.
Oh, I think that's beautiful. And from my perspective, I feel like the concept of expansiveness is actually where people need to be focusing versus the authenticity. It's more strategic, it's more purposeful, and it takes it to that higher level where you actually feel like you can implement and make changes and
Yeah,
grow.
it's a behavior versus a trait, right?
Right.
If someone said to you, be be funny. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, well, what if I'm not funny? What does that mean? Do I have to like have dark humor,
Yeah.
stupid humor, slapstick humor? No, it's not about a trait. It's about
Yeah.
a set of rules, tricks, tools, however you want to define it, which
Exactly.
everybody, it's like saying go run instead of walk. Okay, I know what that means. My body
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah, I know that's amazing. I always think the same thing about the word diversity and inclusion. Go be more diverse.
Right.
Okay. Me as
Yeah.
an, like, how do you, it's more, you
Yeah.
need
It's the how.
action, that
Exactly.
how. So,
Exactly.
some final question is, you have so many passions. What, in your looking into your future, is there anything that was still like on your list that you want to explore that?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a little scary because I probably have to reel myself back sometimes because I'm like, how come I'm not doing that? I really like that. But yeah, I really feel like, and I don't want to extend my time too much. I could go on forever about this, but I'll try to do it. I'll make this as short and crisp as possible.
No worries.
I really feel like there still be a new vision of how women are projected
Mhm.
on the big screen, right? I
Yeah.
think, and especially women of my age, I think that there tends to be this, uh, as a woman, you're either perceived as I need to get the man or the woman. It's all about romance, romance, romance. I need to get the man. The man left me. How do I get the man? How do I get more beautiful so I can get the man, right? Or it becomes more like you have to be this kind of super alpha male.
Yeah.
I'm a businesswoman and I'm going to compete with a guy. And I'm like, wait a minute. I think an opportunity as women to be feminine, smart, curious, creative. I want that perception to be out there more. And so my goal, and this is not the only reason why I want to do this, but I think there's an opportunity. And so my goal now, and I'm working with a group of women actually, is to develop a show
Mhm.
where we are pursuing people's stories and really diving into their culture. And I can't give too much away,
Right.
but it's not about, again, it's not about getting a man, losing a man, trying to get another man, trying to live without the man.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the alpha male. It's about curiosity, creativity, and bringing forth the amazing human stories of other people.
Wow.
So, not
That's
a journalist, but just kind of like, there's so much amazingness out there. There's so much insight out there to be delivered to people, and they see their world and themselves in a new light. So that's kind of what I'm trying to pursue.
Oh, that's so exciting. Well, I wish you all the luck on that for sure.
Thank
And
you.
immediately, I'm actually, after this podcast, I'm going to be sending you a couple of emails. There's a woman that I'm interviewing, and she published a book she did a TED Talk on basically what you're saying in terms of the perception of how women are.
Ooh.
She's an actress, Naomi. And so I immediately thought of that. You would definitely connect to that
Right.
right away.
So you see, I just said yes to your podcast.
Yes.
Because of that, you made connections, right? We collaborated, we talked together about our crazy ideas, and
Yeah,
then you made connections that who knows where they will go, right? So
exactly.
we played the embracing expansive notion in real time.
Right here, real time.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, well, thanks so much for being part of it.
Thank you for listening to the Women Leadership Nation Breaking Barriers podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and also visit us at www.womenleadershipnation.com. Our podcast began as a passion project, and we're committed to sharing the stories of women across all industries and sectors so that we can learn from one another and grow together.